Okay. Let's do the 4 limitless contemplations. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and create the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Semjen damje dewatang dewe jutang den pa juchik, dungal tang dungal chichu tang trawa juchik, dungal mepe dewa tampatang mindra wajuchik, nering chaktang ni tang drawe tang non chempo nane pa juchik. Okay, everybody, I'm just trying to move this table of mine around because I'm trying to get the computer out of the sun, lest we should have troubles with that. Plus the dog is barking, and I'm just going to open the door there for 1 second so that he can go out and bark his heart's content. No, that goes. Okay? But don't bark, Jack. Stop it now. It's enough of your barking. Okay. I open the door, my husband closes it, and I can't win this one. It's just one of those things. I saw this whole weekend has been like that, chasing my tail. Maybe I should go to Cape Town for the funeral of my aunt. Maybe I shouldn't. And in the end, I did it on Zoom. Thank goodness, you know, there was Zoom and I could do it that way. Oh my God, what a life we lead, really. So today we're going to carry on with what we did last time. And it's really fascinating, this Tulku Urgyen's teaching. So the topic is, again, the point of this life, the essence of the Buddha's teaching. And this is part 2. Okay, so again, I want to say that I really want you to butt in and give me your debating, the things that come really close to your heart, because it's so important that all of you change all your attitudes towards your whole life and go on that spiritual journey properly and totally. And that is so important for all of us. So it's really important that you debate, and when something hits you, you ask about it. I love it. And please don't stop doing that, because then it just becomes a monologue. I just want to make a start off with Longchenpa's quote, which really give us the whole background to Tulku Urgyen's beautiful teaching. And this is what he says: watch the mind that distinguishes the appearances. Watch the mind that distinguishes the appearance. The mind is like a sky, free from rejecting and accepting. In the sky, although the clouds gather and disappear, the display of the sky is non-dual and pure. Now, if you can get this, you're okay at death, you're okay in life. The display of the sky, it doesn't matter what comes into the sky, stars, dark clouds, light clouds, it doesn't matter. They all are the display of the sky, non-dual and pure, the same as the essence. Very important. Likewise, the nature is unstained. It's primordial Buddha, uncreated and spontaneously accomplished nature. If we understand that, he says, when the clouds disappear, they dissolve into themselves and become invisible without going anywhere but the sky. Always, all phenomena first arise from the unborn sphere, and then they dwell in it, and finally they are liberated in it. Now, I want you to think of the consequences of this statement for our lives. First they arise, then they dwell in it, And then they actually liberate in it. Whatever senses arise, first they arise from the state of emptiness, the mind, and at present they dwell in it, and finally they will cease in it. Now, it's when these meddling fingers go in, taking whatever is happening, looking at it, meddling in it, deciding you don't want it, you do want it, whatever the story is. It's that meddling that is causing all the problems, because by itself, out of this pure state, lots of things arise, even if we can't see it. You know, my husband said to me this morning, look at that full moon. Just look at it through the sky in the early morning. And I said, it's beautiful. Did you know that the moon was always full? We just can't see it. We can only see a fraction of it from where we are. Now, that is so important, because by realizing whatever appears as empty of true existence, like water in a mirage, one should train in the aimless mind, perceiving all phenomena the same as reflections. Now, finally, Longchenpa says, and I think it's really important, where there are strong waves in the water, where there's strong waves in the water, no reflections appear, although the water has the potential of having reflection. Likewise, mind spontaneously possesses the qualities of foreknowledge, all of those kind of things. But because of the speed of the waves of discursive thought, the qualities do not manifest. He says, contemplate without disturbing the mind water, which is so important, everybody, because what he's saying is, when your mind is full of turmoil and full of negative, I fully understand that our minds are full of those things. I mean, if I looked at myself yesterday, which was just such a hectic day, I just thought I was having heart palpitations, and I thought, I can't do this for many more years. I can't do it. It's one thing after another, people demanding, and it was a Sunday, a day of rest it's supposed to be. Anyway, but I thought to myself, strange, there's a part of you, a little part, which knows that all of this shall too pass. And that if I stop my mind from saying, this is hectic, this is this, I've got to do, if I stop my mind and remain calm, then all those reflections will take care of themselves just as they are. Now, I want you to really understand that when you look at Tulku Urgyen's complete urgency with which he says to us, please find your Buddha nature. He goes this way, that way. You like it this way, I'll give it to you this way. You like it that way, I'll give it to you that way. Just find it and unite with it and trust in it. And that's what I've realized with everything going on now. There are so many people in dire straits. But the important thing when you are in dire straits is to remember that the mind, the true nature of mind, possesses the qualities that are able to deal with every single situation. It's only the human mind that says, I can't take this, I don't want this, that, and the other. We have to really understand this. I don't know if anybody wants to comment, but it's vital. Jean-Francois, I'm very happy to see you here, and that's important for you, okay? Because when our mind is in discursive thought, whatever is happening, we go in with discursive thought. And that is where we are making the biggest mistake of our lives. when we go into turmoil situations with that Buddha mind, that doesn't mean it's pleasant, doesn't mean we like it, doesn't mean, oh, I'm embracing this, I love it, come bring me more. Well, some of the masters do think, bring me more because it's such a wonderful thing. But that's not the issue. The issue is that awakened mind has got both the calmness, the lack of agitation, the compassion, and most of all, the vision to see what this is all about. Why is this manifesting in my life? What am I trying to do? What is this that I'm trying to establish? I don't know if anybody wants to say anything, but I just want to give you a tiny story, and then if you want to comment with pleasure, I don't mind, because I don't care how long we take this, because every paragraph that Tulku Urgyen teaches is a treasure for me. There's so much in everything. Oh, hello, Eric, is that you? Very good, I'm pleased to see you. Okay, now this is the story. There was once a great Japanese poet named Basho. He was a very bright young man, and as a serious Buddhist, he had studied many sutras and many everythings. He thought he understood Buddhism. One day he paid a visit to Zen master Takuan. This was in the 16th century. They talked for a long time. The master would say something and Basho would respond at length, quoting from the most profound and difficult sutras. Finally, the master said, you know, you're a great Buddhist, a great man. You understand everything. But in all the time we're talking, you've only used the words of the Buddha or of eminent teachers. I do not want to hear other people's words. I want to hear your own words, the words of your true self. Quickly now, give me one sentence of your own. He caught him on the spot. Basho was speechless. Suddenly there was a sound in the monastery garden. Basho turned to the masters and said, still pond, a frog jumps in, the splash. The master laughed out loud and said, well now, these are the words of your true self. Basho laughed too. He'd attained enlightenment at that stage. Okay, so you might ask. So all the studying that we do, is it worth it? It's worth it a bit because it gives us the understanding. And it really is good to have the understanding. But if you stick there and you're only in the understanding, trust me, that is not going to get you anywhere. And really, so many times when I'm really rushing and doing things, I just stop and I just look around and I say, wow. And in that moment, there's a calm that descends over me. We miss that, everybody. Does anyone want to say anything? And we're going on to Tulku Urgyen, we'll do a meditation and everything. Anyone want to say anything?
Hi, Mal. I always do. Good to see you again. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's just there's one thing I want to say. It's just we've gotten into the habit of we take things on appearance alone. That's our problem. As things appear, we're like, okay, well, you appear to be over there. I appear to be over here. You know, let's do, you know, the thing. And so if we examine, like you're saying, as long as we examine, then we'll find truth that things are actually dreamlike and they don't exist in and of themselves. So that's all I wanted to say, that we got to get over just believing things like based on their appearance. Because in a dream, you would appear to be over there. I would appear to be over here, but yet that's not the case. Yeah, that's all.
Your own word, one word of your one. Because you know what? You should go and visit that master, that Basho. Unfortunately, it was the 16th century. Because he would say, wow, you've got amazing knowledge. And you do. But you've got in, I'm saying this openly, not in any insult, because I really admire the amount of wisdom and how you've really dedicated your life to your spiritual life, which is amazing for a young guy in this day and age. But there's too much of the human mind and the digesting. And this is what I realize even about myself. It is that moment when you go, oh, wow, that's what Tulku Urgyen wants with all his teaching. It is in that moment that words become irrelevant. And what you're saying is 100% valid, 100%. But I want you this year to really take it into yourself and just give your sharp deduction, which is always amazing. Okay?
Yeah. Of course. I'll just end on that. You, I, the Buddhas, we're all of the same ground. That I'm going to say, and that's from the heart. You, the Buddhas, and myself, we're of the same ground. Thank you.
But let's summarize. Sorry, Da, you wanted to say?
No, I was just going to say, you know, that I always think of it as a nanosecond. It's a little kind of vacuum, almost. It's a sort of a jumping of a synapse between the sight and the seeing, or between the thought and the thinking. And I find that, and between sounds, you get the silence. It's that little jewel of nothing, of a vacuum, yeah. And that I find hugely worthwhile. If I can't always stop and acknowledge it, but when it happens, it kind of almost stops you in your tracks, physically and mentally, and you're just that bit more aware. I think it's a kind of a tool to awareness for me.
100%. And the thing is, it is the tool to awareness, but it's awareness that makes you think, especially when you're in a terrible situation. And it's important, you know, because if we can't do that, then we can't be present at the moment of death. And I keep thinking about that a lot. I've been thinking a lot about how you have to be so present when your death comes. It's like so important, you know, to do that. It really is. So I think that that's very valid what you're saying, very. So anyone else want to say anything? Okay. So let's summarize last week's teaching of Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche, his wonderful pointing out articles. Pointing out is such a beautiful expression, because it's like picking on somebody and saying, I'm pointing out who you really are in and amongst all this turmoil and all this work that you're doing and everything else. I'm just pointing it out to you. So what he does, we plunge into the depth of his teaching, which really makes us aware of the point of this life, the point why the Buddha taught the way he did. I've noticed in the themes in my weeks that I often have a particular nature of a problem that people come to me with, or something repetitively happening in my week or around me. And I seem to be shouting to people, you're missing the point of this life. I'm screaming at people. You're trying to solve your outer situation instead of your inner. There's a solution, but it's not always what you think. We have a Buddha nature that knows, yet we ignore it. And that's what you're saying. And try every earthly solution. Someone told me how cut up they were because their stepfather left their mother, and this person said, all that my poor mother has ever experienced in her life from childhood is abandonment. Okay, if something is repetitious, it's really a blessing, an opportunity. And our Buddha nature knows this, knows how to change, but we won't. The whole purpose of our lives is to return, absolutely return to union with our awakened nature, our Buddha nature. If abandonment is the theme of our lives, then somewhere we have to face something very bravely, that we created this previously, and see if we can find a way of taking responsibility and dealing with it. You know, when we've got a difficult person in front of us and we just can't bear it, it's the most important thing of our lives, that we learn what is in front of us is our creation. And most importantly, if we return to the union of our Buddha natures, that which knows to get through this temporary playing out of the drama of our movie life. That's all it is, the drama of our movie life, nothing more and nothing less. Okay? So last week we discussed Samantabhadra. That's what Tulku Urgyen talks a lot about, Samantabhadra, the Buddha nature, or you could call it unconstructive, empty cognizance. So last week what we were saying is that Samantabhadra within us is down to his last rupee, okay? And he says, Tulku Urgyen says, we need to reinvest that last rupee and give Samantabhadra within the total reign of our lives. In all we go through, we turn to our Buddha nature for comfort, understanding, and compassion. This is the solution. If someone out there happens to be giving that to us, it's wonderful. But you know the story when you're going through a terrible time. There's usually nobody around at that moment that can comfort you. And what do? Do you just let the turmoil go on and on and on and on? It's so important, everybody. It's really important to see. This is really a solution. Samantabhadra inside us is this whole Buddha nature, which when I come to doing some of Tulku Urgyen's, he'll show you how it's external and internal, but we'll talk about that later. But we started the history and the overview in his book, Vajra Heart Revisited. So we were starting last week to say that there were 9 vehicles in Buddhism. 3 were taught by the Nirmanakaya Buddha. 3 were taught by the Sambhogakaya Buddha. Remember, the 3 that are taught by the Sambhogakaya Buddha is usually for the people that can reach a little bit of a higher level than the Nirmanakaya level, which I said last week was all the basic teachings. And the 3 taught by the Dharmakaya Buddha. And all of these are contained within the highest level of the Dzogchen teaching. It's really important that you actually understand that, because when you do, then you actually understand that it's an amazing thing that if you've studied and really worked hard in previous lifetimes, it's easy for you to fly up or over Just hang on.
Okay, we've got you again. Okay.
I don't know why. I think it's because they're working on the thing. But okay, not a serious one, thank goodness. So I've got to do it, and I swore as it went off. I hope it's not on the recording. Okay, it just shows you shouldn't do that. Okay, but never mind. Okay, so what we were looking at last week was how you can go up the steps of the ladder, and how with that human mind, you have to actually stop the human mind from analyzing everything. Now, it's very interesting because Dzongkar Khyentse Rinpoche was giving beautiful teachings on the Prajna Paramita. And you know, the Prajna Paramita says, everything's emptiness, no fear, no this, no that, no the other, no eyes, no ear. And what he said about the Prajna Paramita is, oh, don't give this to the intellectuals. He said, the intellectuals will fight and be totally upside down from the Prajna Paramita because there's no logic. There's no logic whatsoever. And it's so important for us to realize that the logical mind often stops us from going back and having that relationship with our true nature, because the logical mind keeps on all the time, really giving us grief about what we're doing. So that's that logical mind, he says, don't give it to intellectuals, because they can't understand it. When you give them all of this, they just get totally bamboozled, completely and totally. So what we were talking about last week is that I love that Kunji Jalpo Tantra, which says these two sentences. I gave them to you last week. Complete as one, everything is complete in the mind. Complete as two, everything of samsara and nirvana is complete within this. Can anybody hazard what that really means? Complete as one, everything's complete within the mind. Complete as two, everything of samsara and nirvana is complete within this. And we talked about it a bit last week, but what does it mean?
Well, I'll have a go. I mean, the fact that it's all mind means it's all mind, the same way in which a dream is. You appear to be experiencing things from the persona of an individual. There appear to be others out there, but in fact, it's just all mind wrought. Exactly. And then when they are both in one, I would hazard a guess, I'd say that samsara and nirvana are of the same ground. I mean, they're born from the same thing. They are of the same root.
Brilliant, brilliant. That's really brilliant. So in other words, when you have the completion as one, you understand everything is oneness. That's why when countries try to separate off and that kind of thing, they're making a mistake because it's complete as one. And complete as two is that everything in the creation comes back together. That's brilliant. And that's what it really means. And I think it is really very important. So today I want to go on now, and I want you to listen to this analogy that Tulku Urgyen gives, because I think it's the most wonderful analogy. He says, in the system of Dzogchen, remember he's teaching from a high level, but he keeps coming down and giving us, you know, those beautiful analogies. He says, we can compare the ground to pure gold. So if you look at your essence and the ground, it's absolutely pure gold. He says, and the path, what we're taking on the path is gold mixed with impurities that are slowly being purified. Such a beautiful analogy. So you've got gold in the ground. Then you go on the path, and the path is the gold, but now it's tainted. You know, in the alchemy, they would purify the gold to get it out. We're purifying all the impurities from the gold to get it out. And then the fruition, the state of attaining enlightenment or Buddhahood, whatever you want to call it, is once again pure gold. The attainment of stability in recognition of the primordial pure ground. The difference here between sentient beings and Buddhas is merely the difference between gold mixed with impurities and pure, untainted gold. Isn't that a wonderful analogy? So, yes, go on, Dara, comment. I love it.
Please just say the last bit again for me.
The difference between sentient beings and Buddhas, or the last
No,
part
no,
of
just the last sort of sentence you said.
the difference between sentient beings and Buddhas is merely the difference between gold mixed with impurities and pure, untainted gold. You know,
Thank you.
that paragraph, is it not amazing to think that how we were in the beginning was pure gold? We had it all. We had everything we needed. The Garden of Eden type life when it got more physical. And then we put the impurities into the gold. Now the Buddha said, hey, here are methods of taking the impurities out of the gold. Now think about that. Because people say, I know, we were talking yesterday at the meeting about the fact that people can't get to do nondra. They just can't make themselves do nondra. You know, it's too hard and it's too much. Now, when I was driving to Randburg yesterday, I was listening to a tape by Ringu Tulku, your little friend, new friend, Bern. So I was listening to a tape of his on Vajrayana. So he says, he's quite funny and, you know, he's very down to earth and everything. So he says, if you don't want to do prostrations, he says, don't do prostrations, but just know that the prostrations are refuge and bodhicitta. So it's not the emphasis on the prostrations. If you really don't want to do the prostration, you need to take refuge even in your inner being, and you need to have bodhicitta, the path that cares for all beings on that path to enlightenment. So, you know, sometimes what he was saying is we concentrate on the actual prostrations instead of on what we're doing through them. Now, if you look at the nondra is to purify the gold on the path. You purify that gold. It's a way. There are lots of other ways to purify the gold. Okay, some people don't, and they still purify the gold, but maybe they've done the purifications a lot before, because I found it really, really interesting, you know, that he talks about, you know, purifying the gold and how do we purify that gold? It's such an important thing. So all the different ways are to purify the gold, especially in the nondra, because the basic foundation, all the four foundations that turn the mind, they all purify that gold with all its impurities that are stuck in. Just let me give you one more paragraph and then, no, it's quite complex now, but anybody want to say anything? Because if nothing else, if you just look at that, about the gold in the essence, impurities on the path, getting rid of them, back to the gold. Isn't it really telling us that everything in our lives is to purify gold? Isn't it telling us that everything that we're doing is to purify the gold, to come back to our pure nature?
You know, Mel, like he says, the prostrations, they have to do with the bodhicitta and the refuge. And I think we only get that because even for me, it was over my head for a while until I realized, hey, you know what? If I want to realize my true potential in order to be of maximum use to all sentient beings, I need to place my trust and confidence in those who've actually realized their full potential and are effective in leading others to that same fruition. And so that's why you take refuge. You place your trust and confidence in those who know the way so that they can lead you there so that you can be of most benefit. And I read somewhere that you can make all the offerings in the world. If it's made from a selfish motivation, it can't compare to even an instant, even in thought, the intention of bodhicitta. To actually have that wish in thought alone, to actually alleviate the suffering of other beings, that alone creates more merit than infinite lifetimes of seeing things from a deluded perspective. And so that's why I think the bodhicitta, the prostration, everything certainly has a purification aspect and leads us closer to our true nature.
At least do the refuge and bodhicitta in your own way. But let me tell you something else about prostrations, which is so important. I don't want to get into prostrations now, that's not the point. But the point is that when I did prostrations on retreat, when I did them intensively with pure concentration, I remember feeling that dirt was coming out of my body. I kind of really needed to shower, not only because I was sweating, but because stuff was coming up. I could feel it in my being. So it's a very interesting thing because it purifies the gold in addition to the refuge and bodhicitta. Anyway, let's not go into that now. Let's say, now he goes on to explain it a little more. The ground Dzogchen is defined as essence, nature, and capacity. Essence, nature, and capacity. Okay, that's how it is defined. So the essence is the ground, your pure Buddha nature. The nature is that awareness, that luminosity that is within the ground, and the capacity is how it plays out in the end. It's very important to understand that. Now he says the essence, the nature, and the capacity correspond to the three kayas, the three bodies. Very important for you to know. So he says, first of all, is the ground or the basic state in the beginning for both Buddhas and sentient beings. He says, for the Buddha, there's no straying onto the path. The Buddha doesn't need to stray onto the path. Sentient beings strayed into the confused state of what we call the path when their essence, their nature, and their capacity, those three things, the three bodies as well, which we'll come to, were obscured by the three kinds of ignorance. Now, when they defined ignorance, ignorance is a very interesting word to me, because ignorance doesn't mean like we used it. I know when I was growing up, you used it for people who weren't educated, they were ignorant, but that's not what ignorant means in this case. Ignorant means ignoring the truth. Now, in all the teachings, he talks about the three kinds of ignorance, which then actually keep us from understanding who we are and the essence, the nature, and the capacity. You can ask me if you don't understand, and please do. So what are the three kinds of ignorance? Ignorance of a single identity. That's just what Eric was talking about. We have ignorance that everything is one. Into a completely different state. We have total ignorance that everything is one. Ignorance of the single identity. Secondly, co-emergent ignorance. Co-emergent ignorance means that potential for ignorance that was already there in the ground to start off with. It's called co-emergent ignorance. So if you chose not to look at it, if you chose not to be ignoring the truth, it'll never come to anything. But if you're feeding your ignoring of the truth, it is definitely going to come up. And the third type of ignorance is called conceptual ignorance. So conceptual ignorance is really when we are really making everything into a concept. We're really making all our things into a concept, which is called conceptual ignorance. Those are the three kinds of ignorance. So sentient beings Shame, everybody's going in and out with what's going on. Sorry. Sentient beings are like gold mixed with impurity. Don't know where to put this into the shade, otherwise we're going to go off. I'll have to go again like this. I'm going to try and push that in. Sentient beings, okay, are like, just hang on a moment. Sentient beings are like gold mixed with impurities, okay? And in the case of Buddhas, on the other hand, their essence ripened into enlightened body, which is called Nirmanakaya. Their nature ripened into enlightened speech, and their capacity ripened into enlightened mind. The ground itself being realized, the fruition, is like pure gold without defects, and is called the union of gold, ground, and fruition. In this way, the Buddhas were matured into primordial enlightenment, and the three aspects of the ground, instead of ignorance, became Vajra body, Vajra speech, and Vajra mind. So what is he saying here? Okay, it's very, very interesting, because in the beginning, we all have the essence, and the essence can either develop into three enlightened bodies: enlightened body, enlightened speech, enlightened mind, or as we say, Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya, Dharmakaya. It can develop into that. On the other hand, if we feed the ignoring of the truth, if we feed the ignorance, we get all the types of ignorance. The basic ignorance, we get the one that was always there, we get the conceptual ignorance, and we get the third type, which is the ignorance that everything is one. So just think of that. Out of this essence, how have we developed? We've got ordinary body, speech, and mind. We can't foresee things. We can't do the things we really need to, okay? We've got ordinary body, speech, and mind. And Buddhas have got enlightened body, speech, and mind. How did we get here? How did we get to feed that ignorance and just have an ordinary body that has to go through doors, that has to go on aeroplanes when it wants to get somewhere, that has to feed itself, get sick, disease, and everything else, and go through? How did we get to do that?
Through buying things on appearance, naive realism. Just because you appear to be over there, I take it as if, okay, you're over there, I'm over here, let's get on with it. And we never examine. We just simply buy things as they are. We take them on appearance alone, and that's the delusion. We're lazy. Habits.
Lazy. It's not only lazy, it's just habitual. It's a habitual momentum, Eric. It's totally habitual what we do to ourselves. It really, really is. And we've got to stop. If I can do this with you, if I can awaken you to see your usual habit and get it to change, because just think about it. The Buddha has enlightened body, enlightened speech, enlightened mind. Okay. The only time an enlightened body takes on illness is by choice, for the sake of all beings. Okay. An enlightened body doesn't need airplanes, doesn't need plane tickets, doesn't need all of those kind of things. An enlightened body doesn't need the food. They can actually take it on a completely different level. The enlightened speech has got all these qualities. It's like when Buddha taught, he taught with enlightened speech. It means if he had 20,000 people sitting in front of him, he knew exactly how to speak for every one of those 20,000. So everybody heard the enlightened speech in their particular language and their particular ability. That's what enlightened speech is about. You don't have to sit like me and study and prepare things for all of you. It's just natural and spontaneous according to what everybody needs. An enlightened mind, gosh, I don't even have to tell you about enlightened mind. Enlightened mind is of this world, but not in it. You just have a different perspective of everything. You know, what I'm saying to all of you this morning is it not time, yes, now that we find this? Or how many more lives must we do this for? I'm sick of it. Okay, I can't do it for many more lifetimes. If I need to come into a physical body again, I need to be teaching at the age of 5. I mean, you know, I'm not going to go through that rubbish education that I went through, you know, all developing the intellectual mind and all of that kind of thing. I mean, what did I do it for? The Buddha mind already knows that. Don't you want enlightened body, speech, and mind? That you don't have to go through this ignorant suffering that we all go through?
Melanie, can I just say something? It all has to do with, and I remember reading it in one of the books, I think one of the Dzogchen books, and that just hit a chord with me. It was sort of like almost near the beginning, is what separates us from, you said last week, we all have Buddha nature, I accept it. We all are Samantabhadra, I accept it. And I understand it, and I know it. And then I remember reading is what separates us from, let's call it the Buddha nature, or what you want to call it enlightened mind, is delusion. And as soon as we realize, aha, delusion, then we already cross over.
Thank you.
So it is, the key word is, and that had such an impact on me, is delusion. And that is what the cutting through is.
And what does delusion mean? Give me a definition of delusion, Cooks, please. What does it mean?
Well, the mere fact is that,
one, a very basic one, so everyone can understand it.
okay. The mere fact that we see a Buddha, the Buddha is creating that delusion or illusion, whatever you want to call it, and we are deluded, which is no different to saying samsara and nirvana is the same thing.
Yeah, we deceive ourselves. We deceive ourselves. You could say.
Yes. It's not an illusion. That again has to do with, I could go on with our mind.
Okay.
And the appearances that we create, which are our creations.
Right.
We are deluding ourselves right there again. That's what I have to say. If that's sort of making sense. And we cling or what we see or we hold on to it.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's a delusion. It doesn't matter every appearance. You were talking about your weekend, or I'm in chronic pain 24 hours a day. And it's just like worsening. And I think, how can it worsen? I think, God, and then I delude myself, and I'd want to take the quick way out and say, okay, I'm working on the Bardo practices and everything, and I just want to die, go to the Pure Lands. I'm deluded. I'm giving an example.
Very good.
I'm lying to myself. I'm deluding myself. That's my appearance. It's much better for me to take this pain and practice Tonglen. And then I'm feeling enlightened suddenly. I'm exhilarated.
That's
amazing. I'm not deluding myself.
So can you do that? Can you
do
it?
That's what I do.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, and it's the same as your hectic weekend. That was your appearance.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Your you said, yes, you know, it will pass. We say these things, it will pass. But if we make it, I say in the fourth time, if we try and live what I'm trying to do in that fourth time, then we're calm. But
I
as
know
soon,
exactly what you're talking about, and it really makes sense. And that fourth time, I'm going to teach. I've got stuff on the fourth time, you know, because it's the fourth time is not the past, it's not the present, it's not the future. Okay, the
yes.
fourth time is actually really amazing, because the fourth time is beyond that. And I think in all these mindfulness movements, you know, people say the present time, the present time, the present time, the present time. You know what? The present time, we cling to it. So we're not clinging to the past. We're not we're clinging to we're fixated on the present time. When you go to the
it's gone. There isn't such a thing as a present time. It's already past. There's no such thing as a future time. That's also past. Past is past. So there is only a fourth time. I try, and so I'm not understood, and my words come out all funny. But it's and I know, but it's
funny at all. You're really making a lot of sense to me.
But I mean, I try, and because that's the only way I can cope is to be in a fourth time. And then you don't, and then I can laugh at my pain, you know, and know that it's going to get worse. And I'm saying, like what happened to you yesterday. I know it's going to get worse, but once I've already accepted pain as pain and chronic pain as chronic pain, and it is going to get worse, wonderful. Now I must embrace it. I'm not saying it's my karma, it's my teaching. It's what I do.
Yeah. Listen, I absolutely go along with what you're saying. And you know what? Each week, as you embrace that, share it with us. Because I remember once sitting at Sammy Ling many, many years ago, and I was saying to myself, it was with some great master or whatever the case is, and everybody was sitting like absolutely still. And I had this pain suddenly in my knees and my legs. And I thought, if I don't move, I'm going to die. You know, I thought, this pain is unbearable. I remember just having this experience that time. Now, if I was there now and that happened to me, I promise you, I'd just get up and stretch my legs. I wouldn't worry too. But in those days, who dared move? Not a single soul was moving in that whole huge hall. Anyway, I just thought to myself, I wonder if there's a space beyond that. And I just let everything go. And I was suddenly in another dimension. I couldn't feel the pain. I've only had that once in my life, you know, but I couldn't feel.
Absolutely in the fourth, and I sort of call it the fourth time, which is indescribable, basically. Yeah.
No, that's exactly. And so I think what you're doing is you can be so exhilarated in all the teaching and in all your development and in all your putting into your spiritual. You can be so amazingly, you know, so amazingly involved in it that your life is joyous. Now, when I watch Lama Yeshe, he knows how to do it. I mean, he can hardly move, but his mind is crystal clear. Truly. And honestly, it's unbelievable that somebody can be going through what he's going through and still have that amazing mind. And we can. This is what we're putting ourselves to do. So good luck, and keep us in touch with what happens. Okay?
Yeah, I'll butt in every now and then.
I'm very happy I found a shady spot. Eric, quick, because I want to go on with the teaching. Do you want to say something, Eric?
Yeah, I do, of course. It's with when you ask for like a definition of delusion, and when I heard the lady now like mention how it's the root, of course it's the basics, the root poison, the seed poison is that ignorance. So when you say delusion, the first thing that pops into my mind is the delusion of believing in the separate sense of self. which of course is the root poison, because the moment you believe in a separate sense of self, out comes the self-centered attachment and the self-centered aversion. I want this, I don't want that. The thing I did want to speak on now, you mentioned the education, you don't want to go through it again. And it's just a shame, because education today in modernity actually works against us. We're not actually being enriched. We don't leave there transformed with more like knowledge of self. And if you look at what the Dalai Lama called for short the Nalanda tradition, which was actually a global higher education tradition in India thousands of years ago, it rose and declined over the course of about 1,000 years, and it declined about a couple hundred years before the higher education of the West even began. So hopefully in the next life, we can go and have a real education, Sila Samadhi Prajna, where you actually go in there and you're truly educated.
You can have it.
It's not like today.
No, I know what you're saying.
We're not taught, you know what I'm saying? We're taught today just to go get a job. Nothing about happiness, nothing about meaning, satisfaction, fulfillment, virtue, nothing meaningful. Just enough to go get a job. Anyway, so about education, I just had to throw that in.
What you're saying. Anyway, so Tulku Urgyen says, when the essence, nature, and capacity of sentient beings are obscured by the three kinds of ignorance, the three vajras in their impure state become ordinary body, ordinary speech, and ordinary mind. And he says, the three kinds of ignorance are fleeting and incidental. They come and they go, they come and they go, they come and they go. Really know that this ignorance is not something that's weighing you down. It comes and goes. And he says the confusion that has arisen on the state of the path can be cleared away. Isn't that good news? It can be cleared away. He says, when we remove the stains of the three kinds of ignorance, we can become re-enlightened instead of primordially enlightened, because we already are primordial enlightened. We've just forgotten and gone into the delusion. So we can become re-enlightened, he says. And this is accomplished by the following oral instructions of a qualified teacher. Through their instructions, we can accomplish the three kaya. Now, this is the essence of it, which I'm giving to you. It's 3 sentences, and I really I think you should write it down if you can, because it's really good for contemplating. He says, the ground is primordial purity. The ground is primordial purity. The path is spontaneous presence. The fruition is the kayas and wisdoms. Boy, we haven't meditated today. We must meditate. Now, when you think of those 3, that's all.
Sorry, Mel, I can't write that fast. Could you just repeat them, please?
The ground is primordial purity. The path is spontaneous presence. The fruition is kayas and wisdoms. The kayas are the bodies and the wisdom. Now, if you look at that, it's everything you need. I can't explain it to you in any other way, and we're going to meditate in a minute. But I want you to understand this, that the ground is pure essence, always was, always has been, always will be. It's pure essence, okay? Primordial purity. It's pure. It hasn't got stains, hasn't got karma, hasn't got anything. The path is spontaneous presence, which means that everything that you do on the path is giving birth to the way the essence gives birth, with spontaneous presence. The spontaneous presence means it's pure, it's whole. The fact that it isn't for us is just the way we perceive it, but spontaneous presence means it arises spontaneously out of the essence. That's what we're getting to in the path. And the fruition is kayas and wisdoms. Now, this is the most beautiful sentence, everybody. The most beautiful sentence. Because what it means is, once you come to be a Buddha, you have the three kayas, Niyamanakaya for everybody's use, Sambhogakaya, the higher level, which is pure rainbow light, where the teachings go higher, and Dharmakaya, which is the essence. You have those three kayas, and you have the wisdom. Now, let me tell you something. When I do the particular practice, I do the 100 deity, I just always read it every day, the practice of it. So there's one part that goes something like this. You're calling to Akshobhya or Vajrasattva, okay? And you're saying, please flood me with the mirror-like wisdom, okay? Flood me with the mirror-like wisdom and clean up, I add in, and clean up all my anger and hatred, okay? And I'm looking at this, I'm looking into the sky, looking at this, clean up all my anger and hatred. And then the final part is that the consciousness, the ordinary consciousness, as you realize this, which takes us a long time, not as you think this, as you realize this, the mirror-like wisdom, the consciousness transforms completely. So from your 5 sense consciousnesses, your mind consciousness, which puts a little label on everything, your klesha consciousness, which puts all your ugly emotions there, and your alaya consciousness, where all your karmic imprints are, suddenly all of that is changed into primordial consciousness. Now, when I say those words, the consciousness is transformed. I get a feeling inside me of the most unbelievable feeling. I can't explain it to you. When I just use those words, the consciousness is transformed. In that moment, we're talking about that moment, Karen, I imagine this pure consciousness, what it must be like to live in pure consciousness. Such an incredible opportunity, and each of the wisdoms are like that. Instead of living in the negative emotions, you're now living in the wisdoms, the truth, the kayas and the wisdoms, not the negative emotions. And then each of the skandhas is transmuted. So your form is transmuted, your feelings are transmuted, your form, feelings, your perceptions are transmuted, your perceptions are transmuted, your consciousness is transmuted, everything is transmuted. Imagine living like that. You wouldn't even know pain, Karen. So just that last thing, the fruition is the kayas and the wisdoms. It's the way you live. Emma Ho, I want all of you to live in that. Let's do a quick meditation. I don't know why I forgot the meditation. I had a beautiful one for you, and now it's too late to do it. But let's do a regular one. Shame. Even Robin in Melbourne is being bumped off and on. It's not South Africa. Okay. Just get into your beautiful posture, remembering that we have literally hundreds of nadis in the body. But the 3 central ones are the ones we are most interested in, especially for meditation. Because we really want to bring all the energy into the central channel. As soon as we do, the ignorance is gone, totally gone. And our ability to perceive the kayas and the wisdoms is right there. Just imagine you take all the energy and bring it into your central channel. And it's pure. And it doesn't have the ignorance of knowing that there's only one. actually knows that there's one and not two, but you're there. Now imagine bringing all your energy into the central channel and breathing in. As you breathe in, I want you to take in this pure consciousness, this Vajrasattva, this mirror-like wisdom, this pure white purity. Breathe it into your nostrils. And as you breathe out, let everything be. Let everything go. Let the purity come into your being. Let the impurity and the ignorance go. And just keep breathing like that. In and out. Breathing in everything we're saying. The purity, the ground, the primordial purity, the spontaneous presence, the nature. Breathe it into your being. Let it go through your bones. Let it remain in the central column. And breathing out, you're really allowing everything, all the three kinds of ignorance to go. And you are in that pure state. What we were talking about, which I'll talk about in much more depth, is the fourth time. The fourth time is not the now, the present, not the past, not the future, but a place where there is no time. From that place, this incarnation is but a blink of a drama eye. It's nothing, no thing. And when you go to that level, it's so pure to see everything in the fourth time. It'll all be over in a minute. So use it, use every special breath that you have. That in mind all time. Breathing in and out. Okay, everybody. I just want to finish off this section of Tulku Urgyen because there's not that much to do with that. And then we go onto the ground next time because I think it's really, I think what he's saying is really practical. Now that I've moved everything into the shade, the clouds have decided to come. That's how it is. So I could have been in my same place, but never mind. Okay. In practice, he says, recognizing our essence as primordial purity is the ground. Recognizing our nature as spontaneous presence is the path. Just comes out spontaneously. We don't have to work it out. and recognizing spontaneous presence as our natural expression, devoid of a self nature, is the fruition. You know, this I need this, I want this, I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other, you know, devoid of a self nature. That's why these masters are selfless, because they don't care about I and me and whether I get satisfied or I don't get satisfied. Now, no, Nicola, you would say, yeah, but we're living here. Come on, let's get there. But the point is that, you know what? We've got to get off that wheel of life. We've got to get off. When it stops and we wake up, we've got to get off that wheel of life. We've got to go to a state where we realize what we're doing. And he says, although we have strayed into confusion on the ground and path, by practicing in this way, ground and fruition can still be united in the final state of enlightenment. We've still got a chance. And he says, the third Karmapa, Rangjung Dorji, taught about our basic nature in the following series of quotes. He said about our Buddha nature, it's not existent as even the Buddhas haven't seen it. So it's not existent as even the Buddhas haven't seen it. This means that the basic state of mind is not something that exists in a concrete way, doesn't exist in a concrete way. Even the Buddhas of the 3 times have never perceived it. So it's not concrete. He says, it's not non-existent, said the Karmapa, as it is the basis of both samsara and nirvana. So it's not existent and it's not non-existent. So Tulku Urgyen, so the Karmapa says, this isn't a contradiction, it's the middle path of unity. He says, the middle path of unity, contradiction, like the impossible instance of having fire and water on the same plate, does not apply here. The basic nature is neither existent, nor non-existent. It's both. These two are an indivisible unity. May I perceive the mind essence free from extremes? He says, Tulku Urgyen, usually when we say is, we are contradicting is not. So it either is, you know, a child says, Ma, either it's on or it's not on. And so in our earthly terms, that's a contradiction. But he says, this, when we say non-existent, are we contradicting existent? He said, what by this middle path of unity, it's devoid of such contradiction. Recognizing and experience this is to attain the unified state of Vajradhara. That's the knowledge holder. So what's he saying here? What is he saying here? It's so interesting, because what's he saying?
Are you asking us or are you inviting us into your mind?
Because we don't have time now, Eric, so I'm not asking you. Let me just give you his whole thing, okay? If we just look very, very briefly at this, it means there is something there when it creates, but it's not what we think. It's not a solid thing. So let's say you even have a loss. And you say to me, well, it's all very well for you to say there's nothing there. Let me tell you something. I'm lying in my bed crying every day for the loss. Okay, so how can you say there's nothing there? There is something there, but it's not what you think it is. Can you all understand that? It's not a solid, independent entity. If you've got anger, if you've got pain, if you've got whatever, it's not a solid entity. It's made up of all the different things that come together. Therefore, even though there is something, it's not what you think. Now ponder this. when you do your meditations, ponder this, because it's so helpful when you're going through pain and turmoil, to say, this is an expression, okay? It's how I see it. It's going to come, it's going to go, it's going to change all the time. It's going to delete itself in time. So let me just take this and try and go to the place where I can perceive it in a tolerable way. Because when people come to me, they say, this is what I'm going through. It's the most terrible thing. It's awful. I can't breathe. I can't sleep at night. And I go, stop. Just go back a minute. I can't do the psychology anymore. It's too shallow for me. Go back a minute. Step back. And then look again. And perceive correctly what is in front of you. The pain, the suffering, the anger, the upside down turmoil. Stand back and see that even though it's that, it's actually spontaneous presence. And just to end his little paragraph, and then we can talk for a minute, in Dzogchen terminology, non-existence means primordial purity, and existence means spontaneous presence, okay? These are regarded as an indivisible unity. We can also say primordial purity means emptiness, and spontaneous presence means luminosity or luminous cognizance. Now, some of you are going to say to me, yeah, but Melanie, when the shit hits the fan, excuse my language, you don't see that as luminous. But you know, if you were to step back and just close your eyes a little bit and look at it, you'd see the luminosity, because nothing is what it seems to be. If you look at a tree, it's not what it seems to be. If you stand back and look carefully, it's made of rainbow lights, of the elements. That's luminosity. It's not what we think it to be. So it's not changing the circumstances and the situation and the feeling. It's changing your perception, okay? And he says these two aspects of our basic nature, being empty and cognizant, are a unity. He says, why is this? He said, mind essence is empty while being cognizant, and it cognizes while being empty. There's no obstruction between the two aspects. The empty aspect is called essence, the cognitive aspect is called nature, and the unity is called capacity, how it expresses itself. The empty aspect is also called Dharmakaya. The cognizant aspect is referred to as Sambhukakaya, and the unity is called Nirmanakaya. So in conclusion, he says, the unity of being empty and cognizant is the state of mind of all sentient beings. As there's nothing special about that state, the practitioner should suffuse it with awareness. The path of practice is to become stable in recognizing this unity of empty cognizance suffused with awareness. And that's his article on the history and the overview. And then I'm going to go off that and onto something else. But if you can just look at that, everybody, it's the most amazing thing. Because what we're really doing here is we're taking our whole lives and looking at it differently. It's so important for you to see. Once something is made out of the gold, you know, you could take a gold necklace, you could take a gold ring, and you could dip it in mud, and you could put all the crap, you could dip it in rubbish, you could dip it in everything. But does the gold get tainted? No. If you take it and you wash it, it's pure gold. So what we are seeing is the pure gold covered with rubbish. And as soon as we can understand this, we can stand back and say, okay, how do I clear this gold? How do I see it differently? And that's what the path does. Because I can only tell you that doing practice every day, whether I want to, whether I don't want to. And some of you may say, but why do you do it? I only do it for one reason, not to be a good girl and think, oh, well, everybody's looking at me as a good girl. I do it because each time I do it, sometime that day, sometime that night, sometime in my sleep state, sometime when I'm teaching, I suddenly know who I really am, even if it is, like Diana says, one fraction of a second. Okay, I just suddenly know. And when you know, it's okay. Makes everything okay. Really, really. Shame, I'm sorry, I think Eckhart got bumped off totally with the load shedding. Anyway, any comments quick before we go? Any of you others, Eric, you've had your time. Anyone else want to make any comment or question or anything? And I will answer it, but that is what he calls the history and overview of the ground. And then he goes on to the real ground, the history and overview. That's the Buddha's teaching in a nutshell, those 2 sessions that I've given you. Vern, do you want to say anything? Anyone? Mim?
I think it's important to hear. I want to hear that last bit again, because there was so much in that last bit. Very, very profound.
Very is profound. You know why? Because Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche cares about one thing, okay? That we know that the person we are in this life is just a fraction of who we are. And in our lives, like as Eric was saying, in our education, we told all about I and me and my needs and my education and how smart I am and what I want and everything. We just don't get told the truth. There is no I. There is no self. There is something, but it's not everything we think it to be. It's just a multitude, lot of causes that at the end of your life are going to completely disintegrate. And I've been shouting. I've had a few people dying lately, and I've been shouting to them, just know that who you were in your life, let that go, let that be. You've now got to go into your true form, your true state. That's all Tulku Urgyen's trying to say. It's very important. Really, very important, because he says you is and the is not goes together. Existent and non-existent goes together, because there is something there, but it's not what we think it is. So good. Are you all good? Can we end and then switch
I
off?
have a very short question, short and important, because we say the fruition is realizing that things are devoid of a self nature. So that's the fruition, that's the goal, that's the ultimate view. So it's sounding like the ultimate view is the realization of emptiness. Samantabhadra is also a way of saying that same thing, you know, realizing the empty nature of everything, because it's ultimate reality. Samantabhadra represents ultimate reality, right? So it seems as if ultimate reality is really realizing and knowing, not just conceptually, you know, intellectually conceiving of it, the empty nature of things, the fact that things are devoid of a self nature, the fruition, as we just called it. That's all. So it's all the same thing. Ultimate reality, realizing emptiness.
But I want to say something to you. You see, you're going blah, 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 blah with the theory. Okay. Now, if I were to do to you the same as the Zen master, what would you say? Not that whole dissertation, because I've already given the dissertation. But maybe you would say something like, oh, So I'm not who I think I am. Full stop. I'm waiting for those comments from you. Because what you're saying is right. But you got it all theoretically. I want all of you this year to know it. And what you're saying is 100% correct. Now start saying statements that tell me you know it. Otherwise, it's still the theory going mulling in your head. But let's dedicate, burn, and then I'll stay if anybody needs to say anything. And let's dedicate to all the suffering beings. There are so many people suffering. We are in a really, really not good era of our lives at the moment. And I think it's really important that we dedicate any benefit to all sentient beings, the ones in the waters, and the ones I really to dedicate today is the ones that are getting executed in Iran for their belief systems, for their, you know, when I think of that, I go into shivers, but I keep putting out in my shrine room for all of you who are getting executed because this Iranian Ayatollah pardoned a couple of people, you know, on their anniversary of whatever yesterday, but not the ones that have got the death sentence. Can you imagine in this day and age getting executed? I mean, it is horrendous. And I keep saying to these people, you've only been executed, you have died because of trying to bring freedom and your value belief. That is a great step towards your freedom. And this life is really all going to be over and it's all going to be finished. So just see that you get everything that you need from your death. Important, and I dedicate to those especially. May whatever benefit that arises from this practice go to the benefit of all sentient beings. May they be freed from the ocean of samsara, stirred by the waves of birth, sickness, aging, and death. Sonam die tamche zipane topne nepe dranam pamshene cheganachi banak tropaye sipe sole doa dro warsho. You just see. Why is it not saying recording up? Let's do it. Just hang on. Okay.